Russia.
Joe, I'm glad to hear a full-throated defense of our business. People in the news business have been trying to serve our readers and viewers. This presidency is unlike any other that we've seen. We have to go back to the beginning of this and remember that Russia was running a covert action to subvert our political system. We had an adversary, literally, that wanted to take us down, to divide us against each other.
And by the way,
we have been trying to figure out what are the strands of that.
Footnote, and I'll shut up, let you finish. But footnote for these people, what do we do when Kirstjen Nielsen, the president's own head of Homeland Security, says Vladimir Putin was trying to subvert American democracy in 2016. Trump's FBI director said it. Trump's director of national intelligence said it. Trump's CIA director said it. Trump's military people said it. Everybody said it.
And so does the Mueller report.
And the Mueller report says it, and they're acting like there wasn't a Russian attempt to subvert American democracy.
What I found really troubling, I want to say sickening, was the Russians trying to say that they were exonerated by the Mueller report.
Well, if you watch Fox News, you would think they were.
What Mueller told us about Russia's campaign to subvert our country is some of the most frightening material that he gathered. And to this day, Donald Trump and members of his administration really haven't accepted, owned up to how serious this was. I mean, people in my business make mistakes every day. And we made mistakes in some of our coverage, and we're looking at those and thinking about them. But the basic point you made, that we are out there trying to find out the truth with an administration that doesn't always respect it, is right. And, people in my business have to keep going forward as hard as they can with that job.
And, Andrea, let me ask you this question. I'm a simple country lawyer, as you know. I don't understand the ways of you big city people. Certainly not somebody as smart as Mitch McConnell, but if this was all much ado about nothing, if this was just a hoax, wouldn't you want America to see just how innocent this president was of all charges? Why would you hide the report that Donald Trump just last week said he wanted everybody to see?
He repeated that in recent days. Yes, let it all be out. The Mueller report, as far as we know from the very brief 4-page summary that the Attorney General forwarded to Congress, concluded that the Russians were attacking our democracy. But they also, according to those top lines, he concluded that there is no actionable, prosecutable crime. Well, we don't know what's in the classified section, which will be turned over, presumably, to the intelligence committees. We don't know about the classified findings of what took place that was not necessarily a crime, but what is something that our Congress needs to look at, which our FBI needs to look at, which our government needs to act on, which is, and certainly before the 2020 campaign. My information from very official sources is that there was another attack in 2018, and it was deflected, because the agencies were smart enough to figure out how to go against this cyber attack.
And I've heard the word several times, exonerated. Just to be clear, we haven't seen the report, and nothing about even Barr's interpretation
wasn't exonerated.
Says there was any exoneration. And in fact, makes a very clear point. The one quote in it that Barr did put forward is that he is not exonerated in terms of obstruction. But if you listen to the White House, and if you listen to Fox, and if you listen over and over and over again, they are branding this as a full exoneration. It is not.
It's just not
a full exoneration. It's not even close to an exoneration. It is not an exoneration. Does anybody want to argue that? It's not.
Well, actually, since Robert Mueller said that they couldn't exonerate him, and we only got sentence fragments, I think we should do something really radical. We should wait and read the entire report, because we have read with a letter from the man who applied for his job by sending a memo to Donald Trump saying, I don't think the special counsel should be doing all the terrible things that he's doing to you. That's not a letter I'm going to put a lot of stock in. I'm going to wait to read the entire
and here's
report.
David Frum. I think the real news about the media reaction to the Barr announcement of the Mueller report is the final collapse of the anti-Trump into outright pro-Trump, untroubled by Putin's intervention in the 2016 election and Trump's undisclosed Russian business dealings.
Jeremy Bash, he lied time and time again about his dealings with Russia. His lawyer lied time and time again about his dealings with Russia. He's going to jail. The president, the lies just stack up. So again, the question remains, what does the media do? Do they ignore all of the? No, they don't. My God. I mean, you still have Republicans saying they want to investigate Hillary Clinton 3 years later.
And if you unpack the conspiracy issue in the Barr summary, I think it's very interesting, which is why we need to see the Mueller report. Here's what we know. We know the president asked for Russian assistance. We know he received Russian assistance. We know he benefited from Russian assistance. And we know he rewarded Russian assistance. So what I think Mueller is telling us is that the Trump campaign and Donald Trump didn't actually participate and assist the Russians in their interference, and based on that, that does not rise to the level of a crime.
Exactly.
Although if you take that story in its totality and you analyze it from the lens of national security, as Andrea pointed out and as David has been reporting, this constitutes a grave threat to our democracy. It's not just about what happened before, it's what will happen in the future. And so I think we shouldn't draw the conclusion that if you ask for the assistance of an adversary, you receive it, you benefit from it, and you reward it, you're okay. Because you know what? It's going to be a green light for people to do it again.
By the way, and you lie about it, David, as the president did on Air Force One. You sit down, get everybody around, and say, okay, this is the lie we're going to tell the New York Times and the world.
There is the enduring mystery of why, if he was so innocent, he has acted so guilty for 2 years. That's going to take historians to sort out probably.
And it matters.
It matters a lot, but I think that the basic point that we're all making is that we need to do our jobs, unthreading this presidency, trying to help readers and viewers understand what's true and what isn't, trying to help people understand this incredible, full-scale assault on our politics by Russia to try to encourage division in the country. We need to keep doing that. If we slow down in that because we're backed off by the aftermath of the Mueller report, we will look back on that really, I think, with shame. So it's just one of those moments where you have to keep doing
what you're doing.
And kind of just be confident that that's what your readers and viewers want you to do.
After the election, the media is a great punching bag. This is not like the election at all. Jonathan Swan, the White House has released, I guess, a press release or some sort of message to news, this is the Trump campaign, to news outlets as to who not to book.
Yes, I tweeted it out yesterday. They sent a memo from the Trump campaign to they told me all networks, and I said, does that include Fox? And they said all networks, but it was basically trying to single out Democratic officials and guests who have said that the president colluded with Russia on air, and they, it was a gimmick, as one official admitted to me, but they're obviously trying to push this. Trump has said privately that he wants people fired over this, that he wants people who are in the media fired over this. And Lindsey Graham told me last night that he promised the president at Palm Beach over the weekend that he would look into the origins of the investigation and investigate the FISA process. So I think we can expect to see Lindsey Graham do that in his capacity as Senate Judiciary Chair.
Yeah, and so, Adrian, what do Democrats do now? Because it's interesting. And we've said this on the air, so this isn't Monday morning quarterbacking.
Right.
Said all along that nobody in America cared about the Russia investigation. Nobody was asking about collusion. In fact, Democrats told us that back in September, and when we went to a meeting to ask them how they were preparing for 2018, and none other than Adam Schiff said, I've got to conduct the investigation, but I will tell you, nobody in my district is talking about Russia. It matters, but not to voters. So how do they move forward in 2020?
Well, I think it's a two-track system here. I think, number one, you've got to make sure that Democrats conduct oversight in Congress. That is their job. That is their constitutional responsibility. So you let Pelosi, you let Schiff, you let all of the chairmen and chairwomen of the oversight committees conduct the investigations. But on the other hand, when it comes to 2020 candidates, you focus on the issues because the issues are on the side of the Democratic Party. Healthcare, the economy, jobs, raising wages. That is how Democrats flipped the House in 2018, picked up hundreds of down ballot seats across the country. That is how we can win in 2020. But to the impeachment wing of my party that has been so adamant about taking Trump down via impeachment, let this be a warning sign. You've got to take him down on the issues, and we can do it. The issues are on our side.
And again, that's something Nancy Pelosi said weeks ago. Mike Barnicle, you've been waiting patiently, standing by. I'm curious what you think about the, just all the noise from people saying that the New York Times and the Washington Post and everybody involved should have never followed this story, despite the fact Donald Trump and all the president's men and women around him were lying for 2 years about Russia.
You know, Joe, this discussion for the past 19 minutes now that's been going on in bits and fragments for months is truly depressing and truly, I think, proof that Vladimir Putin won beyond his wildest dreams. He has turned our political, cultural, social system upside down. He has the bases of two political parties hating one another. There's no dialogue between one another. They hate each other. They have these social tools like Twitter that they use like Bunsen burners to just torch every idea and every human being involved in this fight. Vladimir Putin won, and he's still out there on the field taking us on, and we're folding. In our own self-contempt for each other politically, socially, we are folding. And yet, out in the larger country, there are people, millions of people, a vast majority of people who depend on institutions like the Washington Post, like the New York Times, like their local papers, like us in some component parts, to give them the truth. It's our job to do our job.
Well, so Mike, let me ask you, did the Washington Post, did the New York Times, did everybody do their job?
You know, Joe, we have now such a confusion as to what is the media and what is not. I mean, I am a strong proponent, advocate of reporters, not columnists, reporters, staying off Twitter, because people confuse the reporter as an editorialist. Then they think the reporters are injecting their own opinions into news stories. I think the Post and the Times and many other newspapers in this country did their jobs. You follow the story. Donald Trump gave us so many kernels of whatever to follow. You have to follow the story. You have to do your job. Now, in retrospect, did we get some component parts of that story wrong? Yeah, we did. But how did we get it wrong? We got it wrong from following the story. That happens every day. It happens in local coverage of police departments. It happened here in the President of the United States. Now, on the Mueller report, we don't know what's in it. We don't know whether it's 5 pages or 500 pages. We do know on the collusion aspect that clearly one thing happened. Encouraging the Russians to do things is not a crime. You can't indict anybody for saying, I love it, as Donald Trump Jr. did. But putting that in the story makes it appear like, oh, they're in bed with the Russians. Maybe they were, maybe they weren't. I don't know. I'm not apologizing for anything that the news media did.
Yeah, and when you even talk about that language that nobody colluded with the Russian government, okay. Did they collude with Russian oligarchs?
Exactly.
Did they collude with other Russians that had connections with the Russian government? Again, release everything. Show the transparency that Donald Trump said he wanted shown a couple of weeks ago. And journalists, just keep doing your job. Jonathan Swan, speaking of that, what are you going to be doing today? What are you looking at?
I'm just chasing, trying to get more information about what's underlying this. You can't emphasize enough that we only have the Barr report. I'm trying to find out what's underlying it and when we're going to find out more, when Congress is going to receive it.
Yep.
And how aggressive are the Democrats right now going to be to get the full transparency that Donald Trump asked for last week?
Well, very much so. But we're already seeing, when we're talking to some Democrats in the House, and there is some recognition privately that they're in an uncomfortable position. Some of them have leaned very hard into the collusion narrative, and they're in an uncomfortable position. It does underscore Nancy Pelosi's prescience here. I mean, for her, you've got to remember, she represents one of the most liberal districts in the country. She had a progressive base agitating. Probably everyone in her district wanted to impeach the president. And for her to come out before this report was issued to say no impeachment, let's pour cold water on it, that was politically kind of a risky move for her. And she looks pretty good now, actually.
Yes,
But
she does.
she still has to fight off. Rashida Tlaib is circulating an impeachment resolution right now based on the emoluments clause.
Right.
And these are other things being investigated. And I think it's Nancy Pelosi's birthday today.
All right, happy birthday.
That's amazing.
She has a lot on her plate
Yes,
with a
she
very
does.
fractious caucus. And look at Adam Schiff now being targeted by all the Republicans, including Steve Scalise and Kevin McCarthy, saying he should be removed as intelligence chair for citing collusion based on what they were seeing in the intelligence.
These are the people that did the Benghazi report through the entire campaign. How long did they
Same.
do the Benghazi report?
Well, there was an 11-hour hearing that I covered.
And they waited until after the election to finally drop it, and now they're talking 3 years later about going back and investigating Hillary Clinton. I don't think any
We'll see,
Republican.
By the way, how about
has-
Lindsey Graham acknowledging for the first time that it was he, not his friend John McCain, who first got the dossier? No one is also mentioning that the
Unbelievable.
dossier.
Good luck with that.
John McCain turned that dossier over at the suggestion of Lindsey Graham, and it was after the Halifax Security Conference, after the FBI already had it.
So, Alex, we're going to Alex. Just so we get this exactly right.
Well, we learned yesterday per Lindsey Graham that McCain showed Lindsey the dossier and asked him what to do with
Exactly.
it, and Lindsey said, well, you should send that right to the FBI. So for all the time of Trump railing against McCain, saying he brought this unfounded thing to the FBI, it was at Graham's suggestion.
Wow,
Lindsay?
that's just so weird.
Lindsay, we hardly knew ye.
Jonathan Swan, thank you very much.
He was encouraging the
So
witcher.
hold on. I just want to say to the good voters of South Carolina, I love your state. I don't know whether I
it's so
love
pretty.
Charleston or Greenville, Spartanburg
gosh.
area. I've spent so much time in South Carolina, and they're just best people in the world. I just want you to know that your senator was the one that actually told John McCain to turn the dossier over to the FBI.
It's a good thing Donald
Lots of
doesn't
luck with
watch.
that, Lindsay.
Yeah.
Jonathan Swan, thank you so much. I think we should have an investigation into Lindsey Graham doing that.
We'll be reading Axios
Wow.
AM this morning. And
Thanks for checking out MSNBC on YouTube, and make sure you subscribe to stay up to date on the day's biggest stories. And you can click on any of the videos around us to watch more from Morning Joe and MSNBC. Thanks so much for watching.